Hi, my name's Toby. I'm a hobby woodworker. And I just wanted to start a little bit of a YouTube channel on some of the things I've learned about woodworking in the 3 or so years I've been kind of putting around in the garage here. And one of the first things I wanted to talk about, just partly because I need to and partly because it's kind of scary to a lot of folks, I wanted to talk about saw sharpening. So here we go. What we have here is a Diston D8 rip saw. It's very coarse teeth here, and that's made for ripping a board, cutting it along the grain this way as opposed to cross-cutting. So to sharpen you need a few things. You need a saw, and it's nice to have a saw vise, which these can be found pretty inexpensively online for $25, $35 or so. I got this one off eBay for I think about that $25. You need a file, a saw file, which these are triangular shaped so that they can get into the gullet, as opposed to like a flat file. You can see on my jointer here, there's a little flat section of file here that will joint the teeth. Get there in a minute. I have a guide, which is not necessary, but it's again nice to have, like the saw vise. You can configure things like I had before, just a couple of strips I put in my bench vise before, and that works pretty well. But a saw vise is a lot easier because it elevates the work, it holds it nice so you don't get the vibration. Anyway, so we'll take our jointer first. Now this is a saw jointer. There's a lot of these out there in different versions. This one happens to be a Diston, and it has a piece of file in here that gets all the teeth to the same level. So we take this, put it on our saw, and we make a pass. What we're looking for with this is we want a little shiny spot on the top of every tooth, and that tells us they're all at the same level. You can do this with a regular mill bastard file. That's a lot easier when you have a jointer. You can make a jointer with a piece of scrap wood and you cut a slot to the file to fit in. Okay, so we have little shiny spots on all of our teeth. I'm going to go one more just to be sure. A couple of those spots are really small. Okay. I'm going to move this over. Now saw files, they come in all kinds of sizes and flavors, and I have several here. This I got at an inexpensive store. Goes by the initials HF. It doesn't work real well. This I got offline, and Baco. I'm not sure that this is a Baco file though, but this is a Baco handle. This is a Nicholson I got from the hardware store. It works okay. This is another Baco that I got off Amazon, and it works very well. This is a new one I got for this saw in particular, because you want, with your saw file, your teeth to go up at most halfway up the face of the file. had this one, which is much smaller, clearly, as you can see. But this one is just a little bit too small for this size of saw. And I wanted to keep it nice I like this for my dovetail saws. This little guy, I have no idea. It came with the guide here. So we'll take a handle. I want a handle with a file because it gives you something to hang on to, for one, as a handle does. But it keeps you from potentially, if for some reason something happens when you're filing, that point won't jab into your hand and potentially hurt you. Instead, you got this nice round handle. So, we got it jointed. And you want to take your file, get a nice, good position, left foot, right foot in a line like this, and so you can see. Now this pretty much has the original teeth. I've made a couple passes with these other files to kind of help, and it didn't really, hence the new file. You take it, and one step. And we'll go to our next tooth here. We'll go one step, just to see. That wasn't quite enough, so we'll go back to our first. 2. 2. We've almost got that shiny spot on the top of the, on top of the tooth. Gone. Ah, there it is. Okay. And with a rip saw, one thing that makes this easier than a crosscut saw, the teeth are like little chisels, all going the same direction. So the difference between a crosscut and a rip cut saw, besides which direction you're cutting the wood, if you think of it, these are just a whole bunch of chisels. Almost all of your woodworking tools are a different version of a chisel and how it's held. So this is just a whole bunch of chisels all lined up like this that go into the wood like this. Whereas a crosscut saw is going to have fleam. So this is going to be more like a knife like this, where it'll make a cutting mark across the wood. And that requires having your file at an angle. Whereas with a rip cut, since everything is straight, you want your file at that perpendicular 90. So see where we were again, about there we see a shiny spot on top, right there. You can use the whole file. Kind of lock my bench down. This is not my forever bench. This is my first bench, but it kind of works pretty well. My next bench is already in the works. I have the vices picked out for it and the lumber all picked on a list. That'll be a fun video. Find a shiny spot on the top there again. One thing I do, some people, this is a little bit of a point of contention, I pull the file out. Some say you can drag it back. I'm just personally of the mind of thought, I pull it out. It helps the file last a little bit longer. Looking at those shiny spots on the top, every once in a while I might have to make a second stroke. Use the whole length of the file. Now you don't want to get too far beyond the face of your saw vise because you'll start introducing a vibration. And one, it sounds funny. Two, you're not getting a consistent stroke on your file. There we go, a little facet. Another guy I recommend watching for saw filing, among many other things, Paul Sellers. He's a guru on YouTube for the hand tool or aspiring hand tool worker. There are others, James Wright, Rex Kruger. There are books. Now one thing you'll see I keep touching. Back here, it's kind of sharp, but not very. But over here, you can feel little, almost pin pricks. That's when you can tell it's sharp. The facet at the top of that tooth comes to a nice point. You don't have a shiny flat spot. You can feel these little pin pricks. to the end here. See that vibration? You can hear it. Okay. More on that one. Sometimes, depending on the condition of the saw, this one was fairly well kept before I got it off of eBay. You can find them at garage sales or the Habitat Restore, various other places. You might have to come back and rejoint and make 2 or 3 passes in order to get to where you're ultimately going for. Don't be afraid to buy a used saw, just as long as it doesn't have hardened teeth. If it has induction hardened teeth, you'll see that they look kind of almost charred, blackened. They harden those with electricity. Those can't really be sharpened. They somewhat can, but not really. And there's one more step of sharpening a saw. The order of these operations is somewhat debatable. Personally, I like to set after I sharpen, but some like to set before they sharpen because you lessen the chance of damaging the teeth you just sharpened. But clearly, as you can see in this one, it only took a few minutes to do, partly because it has these really big teeth on this 26-inch saw plate. I have a couple different saw sets here. This is a clone, I believe, if I remember right, of a Stanley version. And it's adjustable on the end here. It changes how the anvil in here meets the plunger. This one's adjustable as well. It's a different design, a different manufacturer, but they work effectively the same way. So first you have to take and set your number of teeth, and this one is really easy to set the number of teeth. In my case here, I want to set for about 5.5. This one has a nice little wheel here, and then this one has a wheel on the end, but you have to unscrew it, and I don't like it as much. So then we're going to come, now this one had some set before, pretty fine, but we want to take every other tooth, because a set, if you think of your palms here, and the back, that's the thickness of the plate. The set you want to be just a little bit wider than the plate to make the kerf, so that the plate doesn't bind in your cut. So, okay, got this one. This particular saw set, the squeeze action pushes the tooth away from you. So this one, I'm going to start this tooth here. That pushes away. And then we'll skip a tooth. Go every other tooth. Now ideally you want to have about as little set as you can get away with without the saw beginning to bind. It'll make a narrower kerf, makes it less work to saw. And one like this, with really coarse teeth, it's going to have a good bit of set. Again, trying to be careful so you don't You lift the saw set between each press so that you don't, just did that one, this one, so you don't damage those facets you just made. And you can see this goes fairly quickly on a coarse saw like this. I don't claim to be the expert by any means, or an expert even necessarily. Just a guy in a garage playing with some wooden tools. And there's even different ways to set. The general, most common one is skipping every other tooth. But there's wave set, where the teeth are kind of in a little wave pattern. There's another, I can't quite recall the name, but it's almost a progressive set where you'll have tooth in these little bunches. You'll have like 3 in a row, one really wide set, and then a little narrower, then you go the other direction. Wide, narrower, narrower, wide, narrower, narrower. Those are more for like big lumber crosscut saws. Okay, so we have all the teeth going that way set. So I turn this saw around. I'm going to bring it in close here. Okay. So we've got some of the teeth coming now this way. We're going to set the other teeth going away from us again. Now, if you look really close, you can see this one is tipped towards us, which means we want to tip. I'll skip this very end one here, kind of a half tooth. We'll come to this one. And since I don't have a support on this side, you have to kind of eyeball it. Middle of that anvil. You push, We'll skip. Another reason I like this particular saw set compared to the other, it can go far finer. This one can go to, I believe, about 11 teeth, or 11 or 12. 11 it says here. And I have, for example, my dovetail saws are at 14 teeth per inch. Much finer than that. And dovetail saws, joinery saws, you want those to have about as little set as you can get away with. Nice narrow curve. This, since it's a really coarse saw, really doing work, it's okay to have a wider set. It might look a little bit more of a ragged cut, but this is not going to be a finished cut. This is something you'll come behind with a plane or something else to make it look more finish ready. Bring you back a little bit here again. So we can see, if you look closely down the line of this, I mean, I know you can't see from there, but I can see I was right about here. So this tooth is tipped, and this one's tipped this way, and this one's not. It's really easy to see on these coarser sets like this. When it's really fine, need some good eyesight. As I get a little bit older, I'm starting to notice lots of light, maybe some magnification. As you can see, we're working our way down. Just a few more. Paul Sellers, for example, is another one of the woodworkers I mentioned. He does use a saw set sometimes, but he also will do things with, he gets a block of wood, and a hammer, and a punch. Before these saw sets became mass produced, a craftsman would have to do it that fashion. So I'll take a look down here, and see every other tooth tipping the other direction. So this has now been jointed, and then sharpened, and now set. Which only leads one thing. We'll see how well it cuts. I didn't record before to show how okay it cut, but not great. But we'll get just as a piece of scrap to show. Any good woodworker is going to have a scrap pile. Put a piece of wood in my vise here. Get to make sure you can see what I'm actually doing here. This is just a scrap of offcut from something else, I don't remember what. Now, being a really coarse saw like this, it's not going to be the easiest thing in the world to start, necessarily, compared to a really fine-tooth saw. You can go right at it. Since it's nice and sharp now, it should be fairly easy. But we'll take our saw in our hand, we'll get these 3 fingers around the handle, and our index finger points down the plate. That helps control things, gives you the proper grip. And that helps these horns, which this particular handle is a little bit big for my hand, but helps these horns grip the rest of your hand and hold that plate. This bottom horn in particular will get the back of your palm here, the bottom of your palm, and that'll take the weight off of the tip of the saw. Then you take your other hand and you put it here, and your thumb goes just the other side of the plate here to guide that, to cut straight. It's more than acceptable to, when you get into your sawing position with one foot forward, your right foot back if you're right-handed, the opposite if you're left. And you want to keep another thing in mind. Have your arm clear of your body so that your shoulder, your elbow, your wrist, and the saw are all in one nice line. You can come back a stroke or 2. You can help establish a curve. And then like one more. Back a stroke. And now again, that is helping keep that weight off the tip. You can hear it's just catching. You can see a really coarse saw like this. See, there's some wobble in the end there. I got off a little bit. Really coarse saw like this. Hand cut very quickly. So, with that, I've taken this old saw I got that worked kind of well, and now it works really well. And only, 15 or 20 minutes worth of paying attention while I was explaining the process. So don't be scared. Saw sharpening is it's not a dark science. It does take a little bit of skill, which again, I'm not by any means the expert, but it's not something that you should be scared of. Cross cuts take a little bit more than rip cuts. Rip cuts, don't be scared of those. Just as long as you remember to keep that file perpendicular to your plate. And that's it. All right, thank you.